Welcome back to Women of Worth, the podcast where we help you navigate life's challenges and rediscover the joy in every moment. Today, we're tackling a topic that so many of us face: burnout. Whether you're a working mom, a career woman, or someone juggling a million responsibilities, burnout can creep in and steal the passion you once felt for the things you love. But here's the good news: burnout doesn't have to define you. In today's episode, we'll explore why burnout happens, how to recognize the signs, and most importantly, how to recover. From setting boundaries to reconnecting with your passions, I'll share practical tips and real-life examples of women just like you who've reignited their spark and found balance again. If this resonates with you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced burnout? What helped you through it? Share your story in the comments and let's support each other on this journey. Now, let's dive in and learn how to handle burnout and rediscover the passion that makes life truly fulfilling.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. We're going to get into something that I think a lot of you will relate to, especially our female listeners.
Right?
Burnout.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive on this topic based on episode 19, how to handle burnout and rediscover your passion for women. We're going to be trying to figure out just why this happens, how to, recognize it when it's happening, and most importantly, what you can do about it.
Absolutely.
So get ready to reclaim your energy and passion, because we're going to be talking all about setting boundaries and reigniting those passions that might be feeling a little dim right now.
You know, it's interesting because people often mistake burnout for just being tired, but it's much deeper than that.
Right.
It's really like a state of complete mental and physical and emotional exhaustion.
Right.
But the good news is it's not permanent.
Yeah.
Recovery is absolutely possible, and we're going to give you all the tools to get there.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. Why is this happening so much, especially for women? What's going on?
Well, the source points to three main reasons.
Okay.
First, women are often juggling so much. We're talking like work, family, community commitments. It's just a never-ending list of responsibilities.
Yeah.
And all of that can lead to serious overload, which is, a prime breeding ground for burnout.
It's like you're trying to spin all those plates at the same time.
Exactly.
And something's got to give.
Right.
Right.
And then the second reason is that sneaky little thing called perfectionism.
Okay.
So many women, they try to do everything perfectly, and it just sets a really high bar.
Oh, yeah.
Like almost impossible to maintain.
Right.
And so this constant pressure and striving can be so exhausting and definitely contribute to burnout.
It's so true.
Yeah.
We put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect in all these different aspects of our lives.
Right.
It's crazy.
And then that kind of leads us to the third reason, which is a lack of balance. So when we get overly focused on one area of our lives,
Right.
Work, for example,
Yeah.
it can leave very little room for things that bring us joy and replenish our energy.
Yeah.
So we end up neglecting our own needs, and that's not good.
Right.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Okay.
In fact, the source actually gives a great example of this with Rachel,
Okay.
who is a project manager and a mom.
Okay. Tell me about Rachel.
Well, Rachel started feeling burned out after she took on more responsibility at work while also, managing all of her family duties.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where she was just constantly exhausted and felt like she was losing her spark. She used to love her job, but the joy was gone.
Yeah.
She was just going through the motions.
Yeah. I could see how that would happen.
Yeah.
Get so caught up in that daily grind that you kind of forget to nurture the things that actually make you feel alive.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's say you're listening to this right now and you're thinking like, wait a minute, I feel exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm losing my motivation.
Right.
How do you know if it's actually burnout?
Yeah, that's a really important question.
Yeah.
So the source outlines 5 common signs of burnout.
Okay.
And it's key to recognizing these early on.
Okay.
So first, there's that constant fatigue that we talked about earlier. It's like that feeling of being drained, even when you get enough sleep.
Yeah.
You just can't shake it.
Like your battery's permanently at 10%.
Yes.
No matter how long you charge it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
What are some of the other signs?
Well, another common one is a loss of motivation.
Okay.
So things that you used to be excited about, maybe even passionate about, suddenly feel like a chore. You might find yourself procrastinating or just going through the motions without any real enthusiasm.
Right. And actually, the source mentions this woman, Marie, who's a teacher, and she was experiencing this. She used to love, planning creative lessons for her students. But lately, she just felt too drained and unmotivated to even think about it. So that lack of enthusiasm was a big red flag for her.
Absolutely. And then as burnout progresses, you might even start feeling detached from your work or the people around you.
Oh, wow.
It's like this emotional numbness that sets in.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to connect or feel any real satisfaction from your accomplishments.
So if you're feeling constantly tired, lacking motivation, and feeling detached, that's like a pretty clear signal that something's not right.
Yeah, for sure.
And I imagine that this can also affect your work, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Another sign is decreased productivity.
Okay.
So you might find it hard to concentrate or make decisions or to complete tasks efficiently.
Yeah.
Even like simple tasks can feel overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
And your to-do list starts to feel like this insurmountable mountain.
I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
That feeling of overwhelm is no joke. So we've covered 4 signs: constant tiredness, lack of motivation, feeling detached, and lower productivity.
Right.
What's the 5th one we should be looking out for?
The 5th one, and this is closely tied to the previous one, is increased negativity and cynicism.
Oh, good.
So you might find yourself feeling more irritable or critical or pessimistic than usual. It's like you're seeing the world through this negative lens.
Right.
And even small setbacks can feel like major defeats.
Yeah, that sounds like a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah.
So it's clear that burnout's a serious issue with some pretty significant consequences.
Yeah.
It's not something you want to brush off as being tired.
Right.
But what can we do about it? Let's move on to those actionable solutions you mentioned.
That's where it gets really interesting because there are actually quite a few things we can do to combat this and reclaim our well-being.
Okay.
And it all starts with a simple but powerful word: boundaries.
Okay, boundaries. Tell me more about how setting boundaries can help with burnout.
Think of boundaries as your shield against the constant demands of the world. They help protect your time and energy.
Yeah.
So you can actually recharge and prevent that feeling of overwhelm from taking over.
Right.
It's about learning to say no to additional commitments.
Yeah.
Setting those clear work hours or designating specific time for yourself where work is off limits.
So it's about creating that space for yourself, both physically and mentally.
Yes.
Where you can disconnect and recharge.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can see how that would be crucial for preventing burnout.
Right.
And the source gives the example of Rachel, our project manager friend, who started setting boundaries by not checking work emails after 6 p.m.
Right.
How'd that work out for her?
It made a world of difference.
Oh, wow.
By setting that boundary, she was able to reclaim those precious evening hours for herself and her family.
Right.
And it allowed her to actually relax, connect with her loved ones, and enjoy her time off without the constant intrusion of work.
That's a great example of how even a small boundary can have a big impact.
It can.
What other strategies can we use to combat burnout?
Well, the next one goes hand in hand with boundaries. It's prioritizing self-care.
Ah, self-care. It's something we hear a lot about.
We do.
But it's also something that, a lot of women, myself included, struggle to actually implement.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and put everyone else's needs before our own.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Self-care is not selfish.
Right.
It's essential for managing stress, replenishing your energy, and preventing burnout.
Right.
Think of it as a non-negotiable part of your routine, like brushing your teeth or eating breakfast.
Okay, so it's a must do.
Yes.
Not a should do.
Exactly.
Love that reframing.
Yeah.
What are some examples of self-care practices that can be helpful in combating burnout?
Well, self-care can look different for everyone. It's really about finding those activities that bring you joy, that help you relax and nourish your mind, body, and soul.
Okay.
It could be as simple as taking a walk in nature, reading a good book, meditating, taking a long bath, or listening to your favorite music.
I'm already feeling more relaxed just thinking about those things.
Me too.
And the source mentions Marie, our teacher who was struggling with burnout, started incorporating self-care into her weekly routine.
Right.
What does she do?
She decided to carve out one evening each week just for herself.
Oh, nice.
During that time, she would do things that helped her feel calmer and more centered,
Okay.
like practicing yoga or listening to music.
Yeah.
It became her time to disconnect from the demands of her job and just reconnect with herself.
I love that. She created her own oasis of peace in the midst of a hectic week.
She did.
So we've talked about setting boundaries and prioritizing self-care. What other strategies are out there?
Well, this next one is all about reigniting those passions that might have gotten lost in the shuffle of everyday life.
Okay.
We're talking about reconnecting with those things you used to love doing before burnout took over.
I love this.
Yeah.
It's so easy to lose sight of what brings us joy when we're feeling overwhelmed and burned out.
It really is.
Tell me more about how reconnecting with our passions can help.
When you engage in activities you genuinely enjoy, it restores a sense of balance and brings back that spark of joy that might be missing.
Yeah.
It could be painting, dancing, gardening, writing, playing music,
Right.
anything that lights you up and makes you feel alive.
I'm a big believer in the power of creative expression as a form of self-care.
Me too.
And the source mentions Jill, who used to love painting, but had stopped making time for it because of her busy schedule.
Yeah.
So what happened when she reconnected with her passion?
She decided to carve out just 1 hour on Sundays to dedicate to painting.
Okay.
At first, it was a challenge to stick to it. Yeah. But she found that it quickly became the highlight of her week.
Wow.
She rediscovered the joy of creating.
That's awesome.
And that creative outlet helped her to feel more energized and motivated in other areas of her life.
That's so cool. It's a reminder that even small, consistent efforts to reconnect with our passions can make a huge difference.
They can.
So we've talked about setting boundaries, prioritizing self-care, and reconnecting with our passions.
Right.
What other strategies should we have in our burnout busting toolkit?
This next one might seem obvious, but it's often overlooked.
Okay.
It's finding support.
Support. Okay. Talk to me about that.
When you're feeling burned out, it's easy to isolate yourself and feel like you're going through it alone.
Right.
But talking about what you're experiencing can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Sharing your feelings with someone you trust, like a friend, family member, therapist, or even a support group can make you feel less alone and give you a fresh perspective.
It's like that saying, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Exactly.
Sometimes just having someone listen can make a world of difference.
It can.
And the source actually mentions that Rachel, our project manager friend, confided in a friend about feeling burned out.
Right.
And her friend offered support and helpful advice.
Exactly.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. Rachel's friend reminded her to take breaks, prioritize her well-being.
Yeah.
And not be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that's so key.
Yeah. And sometimes just having that validation and encouragement can be so powerful when you're feeling overwhelmed.
It's so important to remember that we don't have to go through this alone.
We don't.
You know, there are people who care about us and want to support us.
Absolutely.
What's the final strategy we should be aware of?
This last one is all about shifting our perspective and focusing on the positive. It's about celebrating small wins.
Oh, I like that. I'm curious about this one.
Yeah.
Why is celebrating small wins so important, especially when we're talking about burnout?
Well, when you're feeling burned out, it's easy to get caught up in everything you have to do.
Right.
Which can feel overwhelming.
Totally.
But focusing on small achievements, even those that seem insignificant, can help shift your perspective to the positive.
Okay.
It gives you a sense of accomplishment and forward momentum, even when things feel tough.
So instead of focusing on that giant to-do list that seems impossible to tackle, we break it down into smaller, manageable steps.
Exactly.
And celebrate those victories along the way.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be anything major.
Okay.
It could be, you know, finishing a task you've been putting off, having a really productive meeting.
Right.
Or even just making it through a challenging day.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging your efforts and giving yourself credit for the progress you're making, no matter how small it might seem.
I can see how that would be a powerful way to boost motivation and combat those feelings of overwhelm.
Yeah.
The source mentions that Marie, our teacher friend, started a practice of writing down one small success that she achieved each day.
Right.
What kind of things did she write down?
It could be anything from completing a lesson plan to having a meaningful conversation with a student.
Oh, wow.
It didn't have to be groundbreaking.
Right.
Just something that made her feel good about the work she was doing.
Yeah, I love that those small wins really add up. and create a sense of progress and resilience, which is so important when you're trying to overcome burnout.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to make sure we hit on all the key points.
Okay.
So to recap.
Yeah, we've covered the 3 main reasons why burnout happens, the 5 common signs to watch out for,
Right.
and 5 actionable solutions you can start using today
Yeah.
to combat burnout and reclaim your well-being.
This is so helpful. I think sometimes we feel like burnout is this insurmountable mountain, but these strategies make it feel much more manageable.
They do.
It's about taking those small but consistent steps to reclaim your energy and well-being.
You got it.
And I think it's important to remember that burnout isn't a sign of weakness or failure.
It's not.
It's often a sign that you're pushing yourself too hard
Right.
and that you need to make some changes to prioritize your well-being.
Absolutely.
So what does all of this mean? What's the big takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key takeaway is that burnout is a common experience, especially for women who are juggling so many roles and responsibilities.
Right.
But it's not a life sentence.
Yeah.
Recovery is possible.
I like that.
And these strategies, setting boundaries, prioritizing self-care, reconnecting with passions, finding support, and celebrating those small wins, it can make a huge difference.
It's about being kind to yourself, recognizing your limits, and taking steps to replenish your energy and rediscover what brings you joy.
Exactly. You deserve to feel energized, passionate, and fulfilled. And taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's essential for showing up as your best self.
And remember, you're not alone in this. Okay, I want to hear more about the connection between self-care and boundaries.
Okay.
Because it seems like those two things really go hand in hand.
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
Boundaries are all about protecting your time and energy.
Right.
And self-care is about using that protected time and energy to recharge and nourish yourself.
Yeah.
It's like a symbiotic relationship.
I like that.
Boundaries create the space for self-care to thrive.
So let's say someone is listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, I get it. Boundaries and self-care are important.
Right.
But where do I even start?
Yeah.
Like, I'm already so overwhelmed.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Just choose one small boundary to implement one small act of self-care to prioritize and focus on that.
So maybe start with something like not checking work emails after dinner or taking 10 minutes each morning to meditate.
Those are great examples.
Okay.
And once you've mastered that small change, you can gradually add in more boundaries and self-care practices.
Right.
It's about building that momentum and creating sustainable habits that support your well-being.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like you're building a muscle. You start with small weights and then gradually increase as you get stronger.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of boundaries and self-care.
Right.
But what about those times when we're already feeling burned out? What can we do to get back on track?
Well, the good news is even if you're already feeling burned out, it's not too late to turn things around.
Okay.
It's all about taking those intentional steps to reclaim your energy and well-being.
I think that's such an important point. Taking care of yourself isn't a luxury.
It's not.
It's a necessity.
Yes.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first before helping others.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
You can't.
And remember, recovery takes time.
Yes.
Be patient with yourself and celebrate every step forward. Even small changes can make a big difference over time.
They can.
So to wrap things up, what's one small step our listeners can take today to prioritize their well-being and combat burnout?
That's a great question. I would say think about one small boundary you can set today to protect your time and energy. It could be as simple as deciding not to check work emails after a certain time.
Yeah.
Setting aside 15 minutes for a quiet break. Or saying no to one extra commitment.
I love that. Start small, be consistent,
Yeah.
and build from there. Remember, you're not alone in this. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes. Share your experiences.
Yeah.
Your tips, your struggles, your victories.
Yeah.
How do you manage burnout?
Right.
Let's create a supportive community where we can all learn from each other
Yeah.
and encourage each other on this journey. And remember to celebrate every victory, no matter how small.
Yeah.
You're doing great just by putting your well-being first.
I love that message. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into burnout. We hope you found this helpful and learned some practical strategies for taking care of yourself.
We would love to hear from you. Share your experiences with burnout, your tips for overcoming it, your strategies for putting yourself first.
Let's create a community where we can all learn from each other and support each other.
Yes. Let's keep this conversation going.
We encourage you to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might also find it valuable. That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, take care of yourselves.